Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Brilliant. Well, this is a special occasion today. It's a really important day, Simon, and it's a really important day for the university as we welcome Professor Simon Tweddell into our professorial formally, and he truly deserves it. So my name is Professor Shirley Condon, and I'm the Vice Chancellor of the University here. And I want to give you a very warm welcome to this inaugural lecture. These lecture series are really important to people receiving their personal shares, but also for the university, because we can showcase our best researchers and their research, their intervention, their teaching, and their entrepreneurial impact with a wider community, and importantly, our professors, families and friends. So our academics are guiding conversations of global significance, and Simon is no exception to that, showing students and colleagues and other researchers across the world that they are enrolled in relevant and really making a difference to people's outcomes in their life and beyond. So as I said this evening, we are delighted to celebrate the promotion of Dr. Simon Tweddell, Professor of Pharmacy Education. And I am really delighted that he is here presenting his inaugural address to you today, not least because his work does epitomise our values of innovation, trust, inclusion and excellence. And I know personally, because I've watched Simon's trajectory and been part of aspects of it, that I know that he understands that excellence and impact takes time. It can't be rushed. It importantly requires strong, compelling vision and an ability to see a vision that others have and run with it and not let it go and be brave and be tenacious and have that commitment. And Simon is the epitome of that. He has not let this go what he wanted to achieve, despite tough times. So Simon, congratulations. We're all very proud of you. And I know Simon has his family and friends here today. He's got a huge fan club with him, actually. So I'm going to welcome his family and friends. And we want to give a special welcome to his wife, Louise. Where's Louise? There we are. Welcome, Louise. His daughters, Lucy and Eleanor, and Lucy is in person and Eleanor is online, I understand. Hello? I'm going to do this properly. Mum and Dad, Pat and Ian are here, right at the front. Mother-in-law and father-in-law, Hazel and David, waving. Sister Joanne and sister-in-law, Sarah. Friends and Bradford alumni, Tracy and David Woolley, Helen Whiteside, Darren Powell, all here, together with Professor David Wright and Simon's old practical partner, Caroline Allen, who's online. Friends and collaborator, Dr. Michael Nelson, Simon's ex-colleague, Emeritus Professor John Purvis, can see him there at the back. Ex-colleagues, Dr. Vicky Silkston, Jenny Furman, Alison Hartley, Professor Rob Forbes, Diana Wood, Rebecca McCarthy, it goes on forever, McCarter, Dr. Sarah Copeland, who I've just had a chat to, and TBL collaborators from around the world and in the UK, US, Canada, Ireland, Portugal, Spain, Belgium, Australia, and numerous ex-students and tutees. And I did see John Purvis as I walked in this evening. Where is he? Great to see John back, and I can remember him being part of the beginning of this journey. So the University of Bradford places great emphasis on our values and our strategy, and these are our guiding principles. One of the most important things is our vision, and I keep repeating it all the time, and I make no excuses. We believe in a world of equality and opportunity where people want to, but more importantly, can make a difference. And we want to be that place to make a difference. Simon's here tonight because he has made a difference, and we value that difference that he's made. He's been a champion and indeed a pioneer of team-based learning, TBL for short. TBL is a much more interactive way of delivering education. I know many of you will know that, but it is not easy to set up and deliver and keep it going. It is difficult. They do it like a dream now in the pharmacy team. But when they introduced team-based learning into our pharmacy programme, now over 12 years ago, our pharmacy rankings since that time have moved from the bottom quartile to the top over the past 7. It has seriously made a difference to the quality, the impact, the student experience and the staff experience. We were one of the first universities to embrace this outside the US, and the first ever to transition to an existing programme to one being predominantly TBL. Now it's used in other subject areas and embedded in other ways. Now I can remember this period. I really, really can't remember it because I was
PVC.
I was PVC at the time and fairly new in that role. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, how are we going to get this supported across the organisation? And I remember thinking, it doesn't fit with any of the academic regulations. Where have we got the space to do the TBL? But honestly, the team had just sort of gone, look, we're doing it. That's it. We're on it. And I just thought the passion and the belief, we had to go with it. And then we had to, we had to adapt to great ideas. And isn't it a good thing we did? Imagine if we hadn't done that, and we would not be where we are with our amazing pharmacy programme. So Simon's passion came from a yearning to impart his knowledge to others, but he hasn't always been involved in education. I didn't know this, but he grew up in Hull, attending Hull Grammar School, a mixed abilities comprehensive, where he studied chemistry, biology and physics. He left Hull and came here to the University of Bradford to study pharmacy. It's just amazing, the commitment. And he chose Bradford because of the sandwich course, which gave him the opportunity to put what he'd learned into practice. And it's also where he met his lovely wife, Louise, who was also studying pharmacy. I mean, the dream team. At Bradford, right, at Bradford. Graduating in 1991, he won the Safeway Prize for Excellence in Pharmacy Practice, returned to Hull to work as a community pharmacist, came back to West Yorkshire in 1994. And his passion for learning and teaching was kindled in 1995 when he began a pre-registration pharmacy training, working for Lloyd's Pharmacy. Joined the university in 1997 as a part-time teacher, doing what lots of pharmacists do really well, combining teaching and actually being a practitioner, a clinician. And he was appointed a full-time lecturer in 2001. Since joining the school, we've all witnessed this. Simon has undertaken every academic administrative role you could ever think of. If we give badges for them, I guess that thing would be full of them. Programme leader, head of division, director of studies, director of admissions and marketing, did a spell, I can remember this, stepped up to the plate and became the interim head of chemistry and biosciences. No fuss, just said yes, got on with it, helped us. However, what he's most proud of, which also shaped the second half of his career, is implementing TBL as the main learning and teaching strategy for the new MPharm programme. It became clear that TBL was motivating, engaging students to prepare and attend classes, to take them to deeper approaches to learning and really making everything meaningful and helping them to understand and succeed in a very, very different way. And I'm just looking at Gemma Quinn there, who's the current head of school in pharmacy, and she came to speak to our university council, who oversee the university, and gave like an exquisite delivery of the impact of pharmacy, so that our council can understand what it is that we need to do more of in this university. So Simon chose to research the staff and student experience of TBL as part of his doctoral journey, which again, what commitment, working full-time with a family, but determined to finish his doctoral studies. He was awarded 2 substantial grants of 450,000 from the Office for Students to scale up active and collaborative learning, and a €440 Erasmus project to take TBL into the secondary schools in 4 European countries. Amazing. Simon was the first trainer consultant in Europe in 2014 and supported programme teams across multiple disciplines in the UK and Europe to implement TBL. He established the European TBL learning community, a one-stop shop for TBL practitioners and those who want to learn more about it. So Simon was the inaugural chair for this institute for 3 years, and he's now looking after the cash because he's the treasurer. I also need to mention some of the awards that Simon has been successful in being given or made. Vice Chancellor Award for Teaching Excellence in 2014, National Teaching Fellowship in 2015, the Fellowship of the Royal Pharmaceutical Society in 2017, made a Principal Fellow of the Higher Education Academy in 2017. That was a bumpy year, obviously. Yeah. And part of the team that were awarded the Advanced HE Collaborative Award for Teaching Excellence in 2017. Definitely the bumpy year.
I peaked off, I think.
Outside of his pioneering work in TBL, Simon has helped transform the way we deliver education generally at Bradford. He's a keen runner, I understand, park runs and more, I think, and is now really going to take us through his journey of discovery, success, passion, as he explains his journey to professor. People often ask at this university, what is it that makes outstanding teaching? And can I be promoted for excellence in teaching? Well, here we are. This is it. Simon embodies excellence in teaching. And if anybody wants to know what they need to do to get through that route, we need to send them to Simon. But, you know, we have to be careful, not too many in one go. So please welcome Professor Simon Tweddell, who will present his inaugural lecture, A Journey Through Educational Change, an Intrepid Adventure. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Thank you, Shirley. So never in a million years did I expect to be giving a lecture here in front of my wife, children, parents, in-laws, friends, old and new, and quite a lot of my ex-students, and here and online as well. And I think when I joined the university in 1997, I never expected to get to the rank of professor either. I think it's, I don't know, I think that learning, teaching, leadership, I hope I can inspire more people to go down the route of learning and teaching, because really I have got here predominantly through learning and teaching. Yes, I have done some research as well. But I think what we're seeing that you can get to be a professor through different pathways through the Bradford academic, and I think it's great that we're embracing that equality, diversity and inclusion as well. So what I'm going to do is take you on a little bit of an overview of what I'm going to talk about today. So a bit of ancient history first of all. I guess it's a journey through my career through a sort of a learning and teaching lens is how I'm going to take it. There's a little bit of educational theory there along the way, but I'll try not to go into too much depth on that. So a little bit on the undergraduate days, a bit on community pharmacy. There is going to be an interactive activity. Don't expect me to just lecture and not get you involved in some way. So about halfway through, we'll do that. But first of all, there are some letters peppered throughout the presentation in different colours. I'd like you to collect those as you're going along, because you will be using those later on. So either write them down or put them on your phone or whatever, see if you can remember them. There's a prize for the person that gets the what it means at the end. It's basically forms 2 words, so I'll tell you later on. So as Shirley said, these are some of my formative years. This was where I was born. My mum here today was a dental nurse and a children's nursery owner. My dad was a dental technician. My sister's a public health commissioning and service development manager. I think Joanne's online. So there's a mixture of healthcare and education in the family. Louise is here today. She's also a pharmacist. She's a proper pharmacist. My children have followed me into as I suppose healthcare with Eleanor, who's online, being an occupational therapy assistant at a mental health hospital in London, and Lucy's a 3rd-year dental student at Sheffield. So growing up, education was always important to us in our house. Neither of my parents had the opportunity to go to university. Very few people did in the 1950s, and they were very much encouraged me and my sister that we must have that opportunity. So it's not just encouraged me, more or less insisted that we went to university. So thank you for that. Okay, I thought I'd just get our pictures out of the way at an early stage. I think that was my 18th birthday, and I still miss that suit as well. Maybe. So Shirley said I went to the Hull Grammar School in Hull, obviously. It was a mixed ability comprehensive. There was boys mostly from 13 to 16, and then in the sixth form we joined with the girls' school, Newland Girls' School. So there's 300 boys in each year. I was one of 30 in my first class. And I think I was the only person, not just to go to university, but the only person to go into sixth form even as well. So it was very mixed ability. And as Shirley said, I did chemistry, biology and physics A-level. I actually changed for maths originally. I was doing maths rather than chemistry. Had I not changed at half term, that would have been a very different career, because at that time, chemistry was a requirement to study pharmacy. And I think that motivation came from the maths class was 30 people in the class. And I just wasn't really getting it. I wasn't enjoying it. And the chemistry class, there was only 6 people in it. Admittedly, they were all girls, and I don't know whether that was part of my motivation, but and I think sort of as I reflect back through that experience, that small group learning, that interaction between the teacher and the other pupils, the other students, I really enjoyed that, and that became my favourite subject and the one which I excelled at. So I'm so glad that I didn't carry on with the maths. But it could have been a very different career. Because what I really enjoyed doing at school was the musical theatre productions that we did. Oliver, 12th Night, well, it was 12th Night 2, it was a production of 12th Night, and then Knights of Sherwood. And I remember particularly taking some chickens on stage that were we had in the, because my mum and dad kept chickens, and those chickens were part of the act. So should have brought them tonight, shouldn't we? So there are some pictures. I thought I'll share some pictures from those days. So, but my problem, despite having Welsh genes, was that my singing voice wasn't the best. And I think not getting into the school choir was probably my first failure as a primary school. I do remember that. I did join in secondary school, and I could tune in with other people, but I certainly couldn't sing by myself. So I did enjoy the acting, and of course it could have been a very different career, and one to which some of my students thought I already did in 2014. And of course I had to get that in somewhere, didn't I? So in 2014, my students, one of the teams thought I had this canny resemblance to Daniel Craig, which most people just put it down to the fact that they're trying to get extra marks for me or creep to me. But a year later in Albuquerque, in 2015, when I was suited and booted, ready to give a presentation, an American lady got into the elevator I was with and said to me, "Wow, you really look like 007, don't you?" So it's been corroborated. Unfortunately, there was nobody else with me at the time. I still can't say it, but anyway. So just take you through the undergraduate, a little bit on the undergraduate years. So 1987 to 1991. It was a mixture, really. Obviously, I was here studying pharmacy. There was a mixture of lectures, sort of half lectures and half practicals and workshops. The lectures involved mostly me copying notes from the acetates that were put in front of me, putting them in a pile, and then not looking at them again until about a month before the exams, and then sort of revisiting them once I could decipher my own handwriting and actually make sense of it and try to learn it, and then regurgitate it and put it on exams only to forget it again straight away. So that was kind of my experiences of lectures. And I think probably the worst experience, and I won't name names here, and certainly not in this room, was when we were sent somebody's postdoc, and they had a group of one of these sets of reels of acetates, and basically all they did was stand at the front and just reel these acetates, and we just wrote them down. They never spoke for those 12 series of lectures. They never spoke. And that, I think we've come a long way since then, but I think education has definitely changed. But I did learn a lot more from practicals, from tutorials and workshops, and much of that obviously involved active and collaborative learning. I remember particularly being given bumetamide, for those pharmacists that are out there, is a fairly potent diuretic, and then peeing for the rest of that day. But that was one of the practicals that we did. I think we're also given sedating antihistamine to see what effect that would have on us as well. And I remember my practical partner, I think hopefully she's online, joining us online, being given 10 milligrams of diazepam, and that really affecting her for the rest of that day, and she was completely zoned out of it. I'm not sure we'd get away with doing that sort of teaching now, but But I also learnt a lot from the workshops, and John, who's at the back, taught me and did a lot of workshops and tutorials. I've still got those lecture notes there, John. I thought I'd share those with you. Those are some of yours on gout, on glaucoma, on red eye, on cough, responding to symptoms, and subjects that I learnt a lot from, and no idea that I'd be teaching those some few years later. And I thought I'd share the technology enhanced learning of the 1980s there. There was quite a bit of social side to the activity as well. There's the Richmond building before it's all been cladded. This was the Beaker bar. The Beaker bar was on D floor where the refectory is now, and that was always a bit of a tradition that I didn't shave during my exams, and that I would. So this was a meeting after examinations. That was on D floor, and this was me doing some DJing at the Cathsock bar, John, if you remember that. So I did enjoy the social side to university as well, and of course this is where I met Louise. She'll probably not thank me for showing some of those pictures, but and also some lifelong friends as well. So Tracy and Dave in the audience, and we still go on holidays together now. So I thought I'd share a couple of pictures of that as well. So 1991 was graduation and pre-reg, so I left with a B Farm, never particularly thinking that I'd be back again. I was just going to be a community pharmacist. John, have you spotted yourself? Just on there he is, Dr. Silcock there. Thought I'd share that. If I could have put my old pictures up as well. And I went into community pharmacy. Between 1991 and 97, I was, first of all, a locum, managing different pharmacies in Hull and later Normanton, and then as a district manager. And I remember enjoying some enjoyable nights out with other young newly qualified pharmacists at the time. Quick shout out to Rona, I think, who's joining us from Scotland today. But what I really enjoyed was actually training the pre-registration students. So this was sort of my early times of getting involved with teaching and training. And I really enjoyed that aspect of the job. And I trained 4 pre-registration pharmacy students during that time. Foster and Plumpton, as they were then, were taken over by Lloyd's Pharmacy, but that gave me a great opportunity to apply for a Lloyd's Pharmacy teacher practitioner position, and I jumped at the chance, and it gave me the great opportunity to use current practice to inform my teaching and influence the next generation of pharmacists. So I think that was probably one of my favourite roles that I did. This is in this room now. I was excited to get my first email address and my first emails. That novelty soon wore off. And I spent quite a bit of time in that early stages doing practical classes, extemporaneous dispensing, Rob, at the back there, back in 1997 with Rob and Dr. Michael Bonner, who sadly is no longer with us. By the end of that first week of teaching, I was leading the Friday class, and I've got great fond memories of helping students to make creams and suppositories, emulsions, and stealing any unlabelled and unlabelled bottles from them because they weren't allowed to leave anything unlabelled. The type of lectures that I gave in those days were sort of pharmacy law and ethics, terms of service, the drug tariff, Poisons Act. Jim will remember this fondly, I'm sure. And they were pretty didactic. It was very much transmission from my notes to the students' notes. But I remember the lectures that I enjoyed giving most and what got the best feedback was prescription problem solving lectures, where it involved me putting up on a overhead projector a slide of a particular problem, and the students had to solve it in the lecture theatre. And they got active and animated about this, and they were talking to each other. And this was my first, I guess, experience of active and collaborative learning. So the engagement was there. It was an authentic task because it was a real world problem. And I learned that you can make lectures fun and interactive, which is why you're going to do a bit of interactive activity in a few minutes. Practical classes involved prescription problems, and we took a third of the year each, and we saw them all the way through from first year to second year to third year and fourth year. And I got to know that group of students really well. And there's a group here that this was a reunion of them, and I think some of them are attending online. This was the class of 2015, and this was a 2005, 2005, and this was a reunion of them, showing them around. And we also arranged a series of evening lectures for final year students and for local pharmacists. We had the president of the Royal Pharmaceutical Society, the president of the Royal College of General Practitioners, local consultants, superintendent pharmacists, and one person that came was Keith Helliwell, if you remember him. He was the Tony Blair's drug czar. I found that clipping when I was looking for things. So, and I think Deborah Lees is joining us online as well, so a quick shout out to Deb. Some of my tutees as well. These are my first group of tutees. I know I think at least one of them is joining us online, Stephen from Hong Kong. And this was 2014 tutees as well. So I came to the university full-time in 2001, and in 2002 became the programme leader for the MPharm. And I guess it was at this time I learned more about what was working in terms of teaching and what didn't from other people's perspectives. And there was lots of positives, but also students weren't engaged with lectures. Attendance wasn't great. Sometimes it was only 50% of students actually attending. And I was getting the sort of grief, I think, from both other students and from other staff about there was noisy in lectures, students weren't paying attention, and lectures were becoming a bit of a social space. And I think this is where I learned first about John Briggs and the levels of what the student does. And I think what some of our staff were sort of at the level 1, which is sort of more didactic transmission, and the idea was that that students were expected just to listen and take the notes down. Expert teaching, and let me just find it. So the staff are there just to give their information. Their own responsibility as teachers to know the content well, expound it clearly, and after that it's up to the student to attend lectures and to listen carefully, to take notes, read the recommended readings and make sure it's all taken on board. And at that point, that's all the teacher needs to do. So really that was about transmitting information. Level 2 is the focus is on what the teacher does. So this is where I guess there was some staff development on delivery, perhaps on ensuring clarity, projecting voice, using visual, much a delivery mode. And I think that then the next stage, level 3, is when we start to focus on what the teacher and what the student does. And then this is where learning takes place. Or the focus should be on learning. So expert teaching involves mastery of a variety of teaching techniques, but actually unless learning takes place, they've not achieved their purpose. So the level 3 teacher focuses on what the student does, on what learning is, or what is not, and what's not going on. So level 3 teaching is systematic, taking into account all components of the system. So I remember reading that probably 20 years ago now and actually thinking, yeah, what we're not doing this right. We need to be focusing more on the learning of the student, not on us delivering. Okay, so the other thing that I did between 2006 and 2011 was I was head of pharmacy practice for that time, and this was really a fun time. Some of the people in the audience here today. And I think what I learned from this was the power of teams and actually developing those teams. It was very much that sort of Tuckman's model of forming, storming, norming, and performing. And I really enjoyed leading that fabulous group of people, some of which are here tonight. And even though many of them have moved on, I'm still in touch with them. And what I'm proud of is I helped to recruit and support their development, empowered on what they've gone on to do, whether they're heads of schools, associate deans, chief pharmacists, etc. And that was a really good time. So there's some old pictures there, which I'm sure you'll be interested in. I do need to give a shout out to you, John, I'm afraid. So thank you. I know it took me ages to find a photograph of you, it really did. John was a mentor for me during much of my early stage in development. I learned a lot from John as an undergraduate, probably more so than anybody else on the staff. But John's ideas and scholarly work really helped to inform the development of the curriculum development that we did in 2012 or 2010 to 2012. And certainly that I would not be standing here now in front of you tonight if it wasn't for John's guidance, support, mentorship, and incredible ideas about learning and teaching and curriculum development. We worked really well together, I think, when he was at the school and I was head of division. They were very much his ideas, which I would then help to implement them. So thank you, John. So curriculum 2012, it really was a revolution for us, and I think we're kind of gambling with probably about 10% of the student population in what we were doing, Shirley, didn't we? Because we were a good big cohort at that stage. Some of the drivers for change really were that our student numbers and our applications were falling. There was increasing competition. Huddersfield had just opened up a school of pharmacy. Pharmacy was becoming less attractive because there was more pharmacists out there. The existing schools were taking on more students, and there was 5 or 6 new schools that were taking on good numbers as well. And this was the days before primary care pharmacy. So our numbers were falling. We needed to do something different. There was also a possibility we were losing our unique selling point at that time, which was our sandwich course, because modernising pharmacy careers, we're talking about everybody doing it. It's not really got to that stage, but we were worried about that. And our accreditation was due just over about 18 months when we were thinking, planning this course. And the accreditation was very different. It was going to be around outcomes based. It was going to, they wanted to see an integrated curriculum. They didn't tell us how integrated. They just said, well, we'll tell you when we get there. I don't think they really understood themselves at that stage. So we wanted to use that opportunity not just to meet the General Pharmaceutical Council's requirements. We wanted to use that opportunity to develop a new unique selling point, and also to deal with some of those engagements and surface learning that we're getting from students, and come up with a new way of learning. So John introduced me to the SPICES model. This was really what our previous curriculum was focused on. It's a little bit of educational theory, sorry. So what we're doing was much more teacher-centred learning. We wanted to move everything to the left, which was going to be more around student-centred learning, moving that information-based learning and giving to more problem-based. Having rather than having a discipline-based curriculum, which what our previous curriculum was, to having it more integrated so students can see the relevance of the science. So say prior to 2012, the curriculum was quite fragmented. It was certainly overcrowded. It was packed full of stuff, and that just promotes surface learning in students. The integration ladder, we were told to integrate. We didn't know how high up, but previous curriculum was very much we're taught in isolation. What we were trying to do was, so let's see students see the relevance of that science to the pharmacy practice. So this got people working together that had never necessarily worked before. We had scientists working with pharmacy practitioners and showing that relevance of science in solving real world pharmacy practice problems. We still taught in year 1, the science and practice were taught separately, but they had some sort of temporal coordination. But by year 2 onwards, and still exists today, is much more integrated curriculum. And the spiral curriculum, which I see multiple times now. I think we presented an oral paper on the integration and the spiral curriculum, didn't we, John, in 2008 in Glasgow? And then 2 or 3 years later, we saw that in the accreditation standards. So I'm sure they probably took some of your scholarly work then. So this is where the students actually revisit some of those themes, but at increasingly in depth and breadth. So it's moving the students from the known to the unknown. So this is very much around curriculum, helping curriculum design. So these are some of the key features of the curriculum, and much of this is still in place. It's being developed on now. So it was outcomes based, designed from those program based outcomes. And it was stakeholder informed. So we formed a group of I suppose stakeholders from employers, from the NHS, from our past graduates, some of our alumni, some of our final years, and they sort of informed our thinking. And I remember we said to them, what do you want from a day 1 pharmacist? And the first thing that came back was people that can work in teams. So it wasn't about that knowledge, it was about that teamwork. And I guess some of that formed our thinking about how we should be delivering our curriculum. So I'm not going to go through all this now, but this was some of the what we're trying to do with the curriculum. But you can see what we wanted to do was get students doing some active learning and working together with other students, and that's when we found team-based learning. So this is what we liked about TBL. It was sort of the benefits of the small group learning, but it was scalable. We'd really liked, most of the staff liked the small group stuff because you're getting students involved with things, but it's scalable, and it meant that students were actually coming to class prepared as well, because they were incentivized to do some preparation before they came to class. They were being held accountable to themselves and to their teams for the first time. And it removes that sort of passivity that you get from a lecture, and there's nowhere to hide in the small team either. So we're creating sort of autonomous learning teams. And this is what we wanted students to do. We wanted them to prepare for class, we wanted them to come to class, and we wanted to put them to participate and engage. What I tried to do flip learning before, where the students would do some pre-work before they come, and our role in the classroom is very much about helping them to learn how to use that knowledge rather than just giving it to them. But it only works if everybody prepares. So what TBL did, it really helped to incentivize students to come prepared. And this is how it works. Thank you, Beck, for this diagram. I think this is one that you put together. Plagiarism, yeah, I should have a little copyright alma-mater on them. I'm not going to go into great depth on how TBL works today, but very briefly, in layman's terms, the student had to do something before they came to class. So we give them a guide to do, and we incentivise to do that through both assessment, they do an individual test and then a team test, and that test is exactly the same. But they build up an accountability to their team. They don't want to let the team down. So it's not just about extrinsic motivation, there's sort of intrinsic motivation as well. So they do some work before they come. They do a little test on it individually in teams, and there's quite a lot of team discussion, quite peer learning going on. Students are really engaged during that time. But the majority of that class time is spent on applying that knowledge, really learning how to use it, problem solve, give them some authentic real world problems in practice. And they have to come up and make a decision, and they then have to defend that decision, and we facilitate that discussion, and it gets the students very animated and very passionate about that decision that they've made as a team, and they argue with other teams that might come up with a different decision, because we design these carefully so there are multiple correct answers. So that's it for me for now. I'm going to get you to do a little test. So this isn't team-based learning, but it is an active and collaborative learning approach. So what I'd like you to do, if you've got a telephone with you, I would like you to scan that QR code. You can do work in pairs if you haven't got a telephone, or and that should take you to a quiz. It should say, you might need to turn the Wi-Fi off if you're on the university Wi-Fi, because it doesn't seem to work with the university's Wi-Fi. It should say waiting for presenter. Have you got that? Using your phones. And this is a little quiz on Bradford, because I think all of you have been to Bradford because you're here today. Many of you studied in Bradford. Many of you work in Bradford. So there's a little bit about some histories of Bradford here. Now, I appreciate I haven't given you any pre-learning to do, but hopefully you might get some of this. Okay, has everybody got to the stage where it says waiting for presenter that wants to join in? You don't all have to join in. Okay, when did Bradford become a city? So that should come on your phone. You should be able to type in A, B, C, D, all the way through to G. And hopefully people who are online can join this as well. And I can see we've got 26 responses so far. Oh, it's going up, it's going up. I've got about 50 response. Oh, it's going up still. So I'm going to give you 10 more seconds. Don't know, you have to guess. Okay. Oh, quite a mixture there, wasn't there? Everything from 1823 all the way up to 1912. The correct answer is what the majority, or most of you have got, more people have got, was E. It is 1897, the official time. So you've learned something today. Apparently at the turn of the 19th century, there's only 16,000 people living in Bradford. By the end, there was over 100,000. A lot more today. Okay, next question. What's the name of the first curry restaurant or curry house in Bradford? Oh, have you? The name of the first curry restaurant or house in Bradford? You're much more animated now than you were when I was just boring you to death. Okay, 5 seconds. Okay, see what you've put. Okay, so 42% for the Kashmir. Nobody went for the Shizam. I think that was the first place I ever had a curry. It is the Kashmir, 1950, apparently. Closely followed by Tracy's favourite restaurant, the Karachi, in 1958, apparently. You're going there next, are you? Okay. What year did the National Media Museum open under its original name of the National Museum of Photography, Film and Television? Give you 5 more seconds because I don't want you Googling in it. Okay. So more people went for 1983 than anybody else. You are correct. It was 1983. It was here when we were students. Okay. So here's a question which I think Tracy should get right, maybe. What did I spend £12.50 on per week in 1988 to 1989? It wasn't Younger's number 3 ale in the beaker, but it was far more than that. I know, that's very true. Currys, it was £1.50 a week. 5 seconds. Yes, it was rent. Retford Place, £12.50. Yeah, I spent much less on the laundrette, I tell you. Nobody put the laundrette. Okay, last one of these questions, then I've got one to do in a team, well, together. So who was University of Bradford Chancellor when I graduated? I think I've captured all 7 chancellors on here. I think I was different to you, wasn't I? I think you're the next one. Okay, 5 seconds. It was Sir John Harvey Jones, yes. But I think, yeah, but I think the year after it moved to Sir Trevor Holdsworth, so I'm not sure whether you did have Sir John Harvey Jones. Oh well, unless it's wrong, my source might have been wrong. Nobody put Anita Rani, that's good. Not that young, you can tell by the grey hair. Okay, so the last activity I want you to have a go at, I'm going to give you a flag exercise. This is for my younger daughter who's here now. So what I want you to do is identify the flags these countries represent. Okay. and the first letter of the name of those countries spells a word. So I'm going to test your ability to remember your flags and tell me what they are, and spell a word from it. And since you're all talking, I'll let you do this in the people around you. I was going to get you to do it individually first of all, but I'll let you collaborate. So you can talk to people around you. Anybody got it? Don't shout it out if you have. Going to give you 1 minute. Okay. Anybody got it? You've got it. So what you can do is type the word into your phone. You can just guess if you don't know it. It's obviously 5 flags, a 5-letter word. Well, we've had 9 responses, so some people know it. Well, maybe we'll find out. Okay, I'll give you 5 seconds. See what you've put. Okay, let's see. So if this works, so let's see. Okay, so we've got, I think image might have been there already, because that's definitely not a 5-letter word. Learn, Simon, Durfenwa. Did you put that in, Daniel? Lily. Potato Durfenwa is one of my favourites. The correct answer, somebody got it, is Italy. So those flags were Iceland, Trinidad and Tobago, Albania, Lithuania, and Yemen. So power of teams proves that some people got it. So well done, those that did. Okay. Thank you for your interactivity. So we want to use team-based learning, just demonstrate a little bit of active and collaborative learning there. How did we go about it? Well, selling that change was important. I think when we first talked to the school about it, there was a third which were really enthusiastic. There was a third that were, yeah, it sounds good, but I'm not convinced. And there was a third that, no, I just want to do my research and just come and give lectures and then go back. So we wanted to use the experiences of others, and we learned a lot from other people. So Michael Nelson from Regis University answered an email to me. I don't know whether he still regrets answering that email back in 2011, but he helped us get set up. We found a video clip from Virginia Commonwealth University and we contacted them. They just implemented TBL as well. So this was all in the States. There's nobody else using it in the UK at that time, particularly at programme level. We wanted to get support from senior management, so our head of school was supportive. Shirley's mentioned she was PVC for learning and teaching at that time. She was supportive. We also got the Director of States involved as well, and we actually put together, he was going to, I think he'd got a new space that he was going to put as 2 lecture theatres, but actually he said, well, why don't we work together and develop a TBL room? So that was our first TBL room in WB23. We got the support from educational developers. We managed to get resources from the TBL book to websites to publications to sort of convince the staff that this would be a good thing. We gradually convinced them. We also had some help from another mentor, Larry Michelson. I think Larry Michelson is joining us online from the States. He came to the UK 3 times to help us get started initially as the Bradford staff, and then he came back again with the Faculty of Management as well, and also to when we ran a symposium and conference. Met up with Larry in Texas, so he's still out promoting TBL now, and he's coming back to our eTBL conference in Manchester in July. So he helped us get started. He created TBL, and he helped convince people that this was the right thing to do. I did have a spell as an educational developer myself in the Centre for Education Development. Sarah, nice picture of you there. I don't think anybody else is here. This was from 2014 to 15. So that helped me to learn even more about learning and teaching, and helping to implement a new curriculum framework. So I was working across the university at that time. I also had a spell as admissions and marketing lead for the school as well. And I didn't particularly want to take up this role. It was kind of forced upon me. But I actually learnt a lot from it. And working with the central admissions and marketing team, and with their help, we put together a sort of a 10-page, 5-year marketing strategy implementation plan. And some of that involved looking at admissions criteria and new videos and things. But what I learned the most, I think, from them was about the power of a new unique selling point. And we developed one. It was what we needed to do was market that to increase our applications at that time. So in 2016, we went out to about 100 different schools in the Yorkshire and Humber region to help to explain what we were doing. But I think what we found was we were actually influencing the influencers as well. We were influencing the teachers, we were influencing the parents. And I remember running CPD sessions, or being invited to run CPD sessions for school teachers. We had a load of chemistry teachers come and do a TBL session in F34. I remember going to a couple of schools for doing it as well, and getting parents involved in this active learning method on open days. And I think that helped really to get what we were trying to do and why we were trying to do it. So how am I for time? I've got 15 minutes, or 10, 15 minutes? 10 minutes, okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about my research and scholarship of learning and teaching and pedagogical research we've done in TBL. One of the things we used earlier on was we adapted the Kirkpatrick model, which was designed originally for training evaluation, but actually you can use it quite nicely in higher education as well. So this was getting the bottom level is very much about the reaction of students and staff and measuring that. Around the learning, what learning takes place, so looking at module results, for example. And the top 2 levels, sort of behaviour and results, come more longer term. So looking at the changes of behaviour in students, looking at results through increased applications, through national student survey results, looking at league tables, looking at reputation, looking at how we were doing really as a whole, looking at what collaborations we were getting. So some of those at the beginning were about that reaction, as I've said, and this was getting feedback from students at the early stage. So this was back in 2012 when we first started to introduce it. The 4th year students loved it when we piloted it with them in consultation skills. They felt cheated that they hadn't had it earlier on in the programme. They really enjoyed it. When we introduced it to the 1st year students, they said, well, what are you doing? You're not teaching us anything, aren't you? You're making us do the work. So there was a bit of a method there around, I suppose, selling why this was a good way to learn. And this was about their learning. So actually, we've got the 4th years to talk to the first years. As well. And now what we did from then on was we helped and we introduced students to TBL in a lot better way than we did in that 1st year. So there was a lot of positives both from students and from the academic staff. Students were coming prepared, they were more engaged, they were more confident. We were getting students less needing personal tutors. They seemed to be getting that support from their team as almost surrogate siblings rather than as surrogate parents. There were challenges, obviously. I don't think we realised at the time that nobody else in the world had actually taken a full programme and transitioned it from an existing programme to TBL. There were other people doing it in TBL, but they were new startups. So I only learned that later on from Larry. So there were challenges along the way. I think developing skills, staff facilitation skills, because TBL and any sort of active and collaborative learning involves facilitation skills rather than didactic teaching. And getting the application exercises right that were really challenging for students, making sure they were realistic, integrated and authentic, getting that right. We thought it was going to be easy, but it was a lot harder than we first thought. And I've mentioned preparing students for it as well. So there was definitely some learning along the way. But one of my first early publications was looking at some of those results, and we did see an increase in the examination results because we're able to pilot it in a fourth year programme, fourth year module, where we got the exam results for the previous 2 years pre-TBL, and then the exam results post-TBL, and do a bit of comparison. And overall, we saw a 13% increase in the exam results. And we used a validated survey as well, and what we're getting from students, because they could make that comparison with this method of learning compared with the more didactic approach that they had earlier on, is that they did have a preference for TBL and were satisfied with it. So that gave us some early data, really, that this was something we should pursue and continue with. And then we've had feedback from students since. I remember this one, I think, Diana, you got this email from a student. This was one of our first graduates, and because obviously we got a 5 year, it takes 5 years to become a pharmacist. So when we introduced this in 2012, it was 2017 before we saw our first set of pharmacists qualified from TBL. And this was an email that we got from one of those students. So that was nice. And then obviously we're using National Student Survey data since. This was one from a couple of years ago. The students had put in the National Student Survey. I can recall being shocked when we were told we would hardly have any taught lectures, but 5 years on, I can safely say with great appreciation, it's one of the best features of the course. Team-based learning is revolutionary. Been able to brainstorm about case studies, learn from each other, bounce ideas, build our communication and public speaking skills. So vital, and these skills are necessary for life, not only for a career in pharmacy. Will, I think that was an email that you sent to us and said we should have it framed. I did print it out and put it on my notice board, but I've not had it framed as yet. So I think what we wanted to do really was start to disseminate what we're doing. Obviously, it took us a couple of years to get our skills honed in doing this and get things better. So it was 2014 by the time we went out to start telling other people about it. And I think this is when I learned about the power of conferences. I thought were just there to sort of learn from other people and present your work, but actually it's that building of the networks that I didn't realise at the time, and that leads to invitations and further collaborations and invited talks and things. And we went to the Advanced HE conference in 2014, and at that conference, when we demonstrated TBL, was the director of learning and teaching from Anglo-Ruskin University, and she said, will you come and talk to my directors of learning and teaching about it? And they formed a relationship and some consultancy work, and we ended up introducing TBL into 50 different programs at Anglo-Ruskin University. A taxi ride with the PVC from Reading, who I happened to be external examiner with, then invited me to Reading, and we've had some success in getting it into some some programs in Reading as well. So we had a conference here in Bradford in 2015 that Larry came to do some masterclasses, and there was an attendee there from the Netherlands. He then invited us over to the Netherlands, and that led to some consultation and consultancy and some work with them as well. So one thing led to another. We also hosted 2 international sabbaticals here as well. Michael Nelson from the US, Patricia Seeley from Trinidad and Tobago came to spend a semester each with us to do, and we got some research outputs out of that as well. And we set up the European team-based learning community in 2016, which Shirley mentioned earlier on. And I was the inaugural chair for that. Initially, it was the UK based, but since then we've had success in spreading it to the Netherlands, to Spain, to Ireland, to Italy, Portugal, Sweden. I've done some work with the medical school in Australia, and we had some visitors from Switzerland last month as well. And it gave me the opportunity to network and get to know other people, and then we put in some joint collaborative grants. So I was the Bradford PI in a £500,000 HEFCE Catalyst B, where we scaled up the use of TBL. And then working with Beck as our educational developer in that programme, and we managed to get it into a number of other programmes. And then I was the PI on a 440,000 Erasmus project to take TBL into a number of schools. And there's a few people here, our 2 project managers for the programme are here, and Stella, our educational researcher for that programme as well. More about those in a moment. But yes, it's led to collaborations. So Michael, from answering that email on the listserv in 2011, led us to become good friends. He introduced me to TBL in pharmacy. I introduced him to qualitative research, and we've published 3 papers together since. It's a conference in Florida, I think. The project for the Office for Students. This was some of the outcomes that were getting. So Beck was our educational developer. She worked with paramedics, psychology, biomed, nursing, peace studies, law, business and management, not necessarily to the scale that we were doing in pharmacy, but working with some of those module leaders to scale up that use. And when we did some research on it as well. So what we saw was higher attainment, higher progression. This was across all 3 of the institutions, so Nottingham Trent University and Anglia Ruskin. Reduced or eliminated some of those attainment gaps which we were seeing, and these were some of the results that we saw. So this was female performance across all modules in the university that weren't using TBL. For females, this was for males, so there's a 3 percentage point gap there. Introduced TBL, everybody did better, was still a 3 percentage point gap. So we didn't manage to do anything with gender on attainment in terms of reducing the gender gap, but everybody did better. So the females still did better for males in both using TBL and non-TBL. But what we did do, we looked at polar scores. Polar scores are the participation of local areas, classification groups. So it's basically the more likely you are to go to the university or least likely to go to university. And there is a link between that and sort of deprivation as well. So those that are more likely to go to university, that perhaps from a better off area, we're getting 58% across their means. In a lower one, 56%. So there wasn't a huge gap, but we did manage to actually reverse that gap slightly. So those that were coming from a low TBL, everybody increased, so we reversed that gap. Similarly with ethnic minority groups, there was a 3% gap. White students were outperforming ethnic minority students by 3%. With TBL, we saw that gap disappear. Similarly with disabilities, if people had a declared disability, they were performing 2 percentage points lower with a disability than no disability. Using TBL, that disappeared as well. So those were some really good results. And this was not just at Bradford, this was at the other 2 universities as well. So if you're interested in looking at that, that project is on the Office for Students website because they sponsored that. I won't go through all those now. There's the, can't really see that very well. It's aclproject.org.uk. So TBL does take time to establish, and the results weren't always as good in the first year as they were in subsequent years. But better engagement with the education developer did help, and obviously some of it was that people needed significant support, development and planning, and the lead in time as well. We had a year to introduce it across our programme. And the second big project that I've been involved with is taking TBL into schools. So this was a joint project with a umbrella group of schools in Spain, the International Baccalaureate Organisation, the Technology of the University of Shannon, and ourselves. So we were the PIs on it. And basically what we're doing was we're recruiting teachers from initially from 32 schools. So we got the funding towards the end of 2019. And the plan was to do all sorts with it. Unfortunately, COVID did affect, because we were just about ready to go by about February, March 2020. So it did affect things a little bit, and obviously schools were very busy at that time. We did manage to recruit 23 teachers, and Beck trained that first cohort via Zoom. We were trying to get together because obviously part of Erasmus is actually learning across the European countries. But we did get together eventually in 2022 in Ireland to train some of second cohort and run some mentoring sessions for the first cohort. And we did do some dissemination events. This was in Madrid, and that was attended by the Minister for Education, which was great. And we had dissemination events in Ireland and Bradford as well. And what we were seeing, what the outcomes were, this paper was one that we got published last year, with similar results to higher education, really, that it is transferable to secondary education with some minor adaptations, and that TBL is effective at engaging students in meaningful active learning. The benefits of using TBL make it worth the time and effort for secondary school teachers, and it did increase the job satisfaction of those teachers as a result. The second study we're trying to get published at the moment, that was looking at students' responses, students' experience of it. The initial plan was to do focus groups with those, but COVID and the extension that we needed prevented us doing that. But we did do an evaluation questionnaire, and we got feedback from 247 students across all the different countries. Again, the majority of students preferred TBL, but not all. These were teachers that were new to TBL and students that were new to TBL. Interestingly, Ireland and the UK fared better. About 92% students preferred it. Spain was a little bit further down the line. Whether there was something lost in translation there, I'm not sure. So that's some of the research projects. Consultancies, we've done some of those, both in the UK and abroad. This is Beck and I in Ireland, Gemma and I in the Netherlands, and I thought I'd better put a picture of a man on there as well, just so my wife knows that I don't just go away with women all the time. So that was Uwe and I in Italy, doing some consultancies. So 12 years on, we are established. We are some of the experts in TBL across Europe. We have 2 of the 4 consultant trainers on staff. 3 of them are in Bradford. The 4th is in Bournemouth. Starts with a B, I suppose. Gemma and I have both been successful at getting national teaching fellowships as a result of TBL, and we won that Kate Award for teaching excellence in 2017. And we do often host visitors here as well. We had some people from Switzerland last month in their nursing school that were wanting to use it. And it's helped us to do our own research as well. Gemma, I and Sue supervise some PhD students. I think Rachel's here online. She's looking at TBL in students with communication difficulties. So students that might have autism, what's their experiences of using TBL and of active and collaborative learning. TBL and professional identities, and TBL and communities of practice. So I'm going to finish with just saying what's next. Well, it looks like I'm going to be the global team-based learning collaborative treasurer and a member of their exec for the next 2 years. So that will help me sort of get some of the money over to the UK, hopefully, maybe, whether Hugh's listening to that. Hugh's the current treasurer in the US. More PhDs, hopefully apply for some more grants. What we'd like to do is get some grants perhaps with PhD stipends and that cover fees as well. Maybe go into more depth with some of those disparities, some of those perhaps disabilities, maybe some of the people that are less likely to go to university. Continue to work with TBL in schools. And what we'd really like is a centre for team-based learning, because we are advising other people now. We are could be a European centre for them. More collaborations. I'm doing a session on Friday with medical school in the UAE online. And we've got 25 people attending a 3-day fundamental training programme in TBL, half of which are paying us fees to do so. So that'll bring in about 5,000 or 6,000 to the university in June. So this can continue to grow. So it's just by thanking a fair few people. So thank you to Louise, my wife, my children, my mum and dad, my in-laws, to John and to Larry for the mentorship and the help they've given. To Beck and Michael and Gemma for their help with consultancies. There's far too many people that I could miss. The talent team, many of which are here today, for the schools group. I'd also like just to remember a few people as well that we've lost in the last year or two. So Dr. Michael Bonner, who was one of the first people that I was teaching with in 1997, we lost him this year. Dr. Peter Linley was the first person that I came across at Bradford because he was the admissions tutor back in 1986. Professor Robert Naylor was my first head of school. Dr. Ian Naylor and Dr. Max Foy, all of which taught me. Unfortunately, we've lost those in the last year or two. So I just want to remember them. So the last activity, I don't know if anybody's been collecting the letters as we've been going through, or you just completely forgotten about it. I was trying to keep you awake by collecting those letters. Yes, fantastic, well done. So thank you, Nigel, well done. So the letters spelt out questions of my two of my activities. So yeah, playing bridge to exercise the mind, running to exercise. So well done, Nigel. So that's it for me. I think there's possible questions. I think you might be hosting questions, are you? Oh, by the way, that's me, Marcus and Gemma. Marcus was one of our previous heads of school, doing a run on last Sunday. That was the what's it called, Gemma? The Race for Life. So if anybody wants to donate, I've put a QR code up there.
Thank you very much, Simon. And I think we better start with a round of applause.
Oh,